You think you know color? Think again. Every hue, every shade, every gradient that paints your world isn't just a property of light. It's a creation of your mind. The reds that seem fiery, the blues that soothe, the greens that calm. They aren't universal truths. They're illusions carefully constructed by your brain to make sense of a chaotic, colorless reality. What you're about to discover is the hidden language of color perception, a language so subtle and powerful it shapes how you feel, think, and even behave without you ever realizing it. Let's start with a simple truth. Color doesn't exist out there in the world. Not really. The physical world is made of electromagnetic waves of different wavelengths, and it's your brain that translates those waves into what you call color. When light hits your eyes, specialized cells called cones detect the wavelengths and send signals to your brain. But here's where it gets fascinating. Those signals don't represent color by themselves. Your brain interprets them through context, memory, and even emotion. So, the blue of the ocean or the red of a sunset isn't an objective property. It's a personal experience. But that personal experience can be influenced, even manipulated. In every culture on Earth, color carries emotional undertones. Red is often associated with passion, danger, and power. Blue evokes calmness and trust. Yellow brings energy and optimism. Yet these associations aren't the same everywhere. In Western cultures, white symbolizes purity and peace. But in parts of Asia, white is the color of mourning. In Japan, purple signifies nobility. In South Africa, it can represent loss. Our perception of color is shaped as much by culture as by biology. Language also molds the way we see color. Some cultures have only a few words for color, while others have dozens for shades of blue or green. The Himba people of Namibia, for instance, categorize colors differently from Western cultures, and as a result, they can distinguish shades that might look identical to us. Your brain literally sharpens its visual distinction based on the words you have available. In other words, the language you speak can determine the colors you can perceive. Now let's talk about emotion. Because colors don't just reflect your mood, they can influence it. Scientists have long studied how colors affect human psychology. Red increases heart rate and adrenaline, enhancing alertness but also aggression. That's why it's used in warning signs, fast food logos, and sports uniforms. Blue, on the other hand, lowers blood pressure and slows breathing, which is why it dominates corporate branding and hospital walls. Yellow stimulates creativity, but can also trigger anxiety if it's too intense. Green is associated with growth and balance, which explains why we find nature so relaxing. Even black, often linked with power and mystery, can influence how we perceive authority and seriousness. Can colors control your mood? The answer is not entirely, but they absolutely can steer it. In modern design and marketing, color psychology is a subtle art form. Brands carefully select hues to evoke specific emotions. Restaurants use warm tones to stimulate appetite, while tech companies prefer cool colors to imply innovation and trust. You might think your favorite color is a personal choice, but more often than not, it's a reflection of how colors make you feel on a subconscious level. And while color affects emotions, perception itself can vary drastically from person to person. Take color blindness, for example. We often think of it as simply mixing up red and green, but it's more complex than that. Some people lack one of the 3 types of cone receptors in their eyes, altering their entire visual world. To them, the world looks muted or colors overlap in unexpected ways. But rather than being a limitation, it shows how subjective color really is. Your red may not be my red. 2 people could look at the same sunset and see entirely different hues. Then there are those who experience the world in an entirely different way, synesthetes. For them, color isn't confined to vision. They might hear colors in music, taste colors in words, or feel colors in numbers. It's called synesthesia, a blending of the senses that reveals just how intertwined perception really is. Imagine hearing a piano note and instantly seeing a burst of blue light in your mind, or reading someone's name and tasting chocolate. For synesthetes, the language of color isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Artists and designers have long understood the power of color to shape perception. Painters like Van Gogh used contrasting colors to evoke emotion. Filmmakers use color palettes to tell stories without words. Think of the cool blues of a melancholy scene or the fiery oranges of passion and chaos. Interior designers use color psychology to create mood. Blues and greens for calm spaces, yellows and oranges for energy and warmth. Even politicians and public speakers use color strategically. A navy suit for authority, a red tie for power, a pastel dress for approachability. And now, in 2025, color trends themselves reflect societal shifts. After years of uncertainty and global tension, colors of serenity and renewal dominate design. Soft greens, gentle blues, and earth tones. These hues represent healing, sustainability, and emotional recovery. The digital world, however, leans toward vivid neons and iridescent tones, the celebration of creativity and escapism. Our collective color palette mirrors our collective state of mind. But perhaps the most fascinating truth about color is how deeply personal it is. Two people can look at the same color and feel completely different things based on their memories and experiences. Someone might love the color yellow because it reminds them of sunlight and childhood, while another might dislike it because it triggers a memory of illness or discomfort. Color isn't just seen, it's felt. It's a silent emotional code that our brains have been decoding since the dawn of humanity, that if you look at how different cultures roll out the carpet, literally, you'll see how color communicates values. In the West, a red carpet signifies prestige and celebration, rolled out for royalty and celebrities. But in other cultures, carpets of gold, green, or blue are used to welcome guests, each color symbolizing prosperity, peace, or protection. These rituals show that color isn't just visual, it's deeply social. It's how we signal respect, emotion, and connection. And so, the next time you step outside and notice the world around you, remember that what you see is not the world as it is, but as your brain chooses to interpret it. Every shade, every tint, every glow, they're translations of energy into emotion. The language of color is the language of your mind, an unspoken dialogue between light and consciousness. Maybe that's why we're drawn to sunsets, fireworks, and stained glass. Not just because they're beautiful, but because they awaken something ancient within us. Awe, emotion, and perception collide in those moments. They remind us that reality is filtered through feeling, and that color is the poetry of light written in the language of the brain. So, the next time you find yourself captivated by the blue of the ocean or the warmth of a golden room, pause for a second. You're not just looking at color, you're looking at a story, one that's uniquely yours, shaped by evolution, culture, and emotion. Because in the end, color doesn't just decorate our world, it defines how we experience it.
If you find this video informative, please hit the like button, subscribe this channel, and feel free to share your comments.